Welcome back to Woman, Conversations in Black and White. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Linda. We are recording our conversations across racial lines on sensitive topics to educate, to enlighten, to create understanding, and to encourage our viewers and listeners to do the same things yourselves. Create a space with a friend and talk about these hard topics. Today's topic, Bernadette, this one.
Today's topic are words matter. And I have shared before on here that I am a counselor. And so being that you have, every profession has an overseeing body. You have the American Medical Association over doctors, APA, American Psychological Association over psychologists. I fall under ACA, which is the American Counseling Association. And so they sent out an official response in regard to the Derek Chauvin trial and the verdict coming out. Now, I'm only going to read a brief part of the response because there's no need in going on with a lot of it. But this is how it starts off, and this is why I say words matter, because we are really missing some marks here, some significant marks. It says ACA is built on a mission that promotes human dignity and diversity, respect, the attainment of quality of life for all, empowerment, integrity, social justice, advocacy, equity, and inclusion. The increasing terror and constant trauma of racial injustice and systemic racism in the United States reached a new emotional tipping point with the trial of Derek Chauvin and the death of George Floyd. Now, this statement came out, and I'm stopping it there. And the reason why I'm stopping it there is because this statement came out after a unanimous verdict charging him with the murder of George Floyd. George Floyd didn't die. He was murdered.
Right.
And so for a governing body that is charged with being the larger voice of mental health professionals, claiming to promote equity, inclusion, and social justice, to put out a statement saying the death of George Floyd versus the murder of George Floyd. It's part of the systemic issues that we are literally speaking of.
Yep. I get that. You could, I was going to say, you could, and maybe some of your fellow counselors would do that, write a letter to them.
I will, and I'm hopeful. I hope others already have. I don't know, but it also makes me wonder, Linda, like how much more does it take for us to even get the words right?
There's a lot of I don't know, this word just keeps popping into my head. I guess I'll just say it, but like there's a lot of pussyfooting around, tiptoeing. And pussyfooting was a word I grew up with,
I know that word. Yep.
Being careful, being a little too careful, and it's like, well, we don't want to offend anybody, so we just won't really say what's real here. Right. We'll just be kind of careful here. Yeah. But by being careful when you need to be clear, you just create problems. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, it was such an invalidating statement, and I'm looking at, so the ACA president herself, Dr. Pressman, they have her in quotes saying the trial of Derek Chauvin, coupled with other high-profile police killings of Black Americans in recent months, has been excruciatingly re-traumatizing for many people, and Black people in particular. You don't think you saying the death of George Floyd isn't traumatizing or invalidating or dehumanizing to the millions of Black clinicians who read this statement? You're literally continuing to add to the trauma and the dehumanization by pussyfooting around.
Right. It's a useful term, pussyfooting.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Kind of fit there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure because it implies, well, we've said this before, but it's like all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
Nothing.
So while the people who crafted the words to that think, well, we don't want to step on any toes here, we don't want to offend anybody, so we're going to choose a nice neutral word like death instead of a real word like murder.
Murder.
And before the trial came out, I could understand. I mean, I probably wouldn't have said it that way, but I could understand why they might have chosen this. But after the verdict has been reached and a jury of peers, 12 people, agreed in a
Unanimous
very
verdict.
short time that
Yes.
this was murder.
Murder.
And they can't use that word. It's like, okay, who are you trying to keep happy here?
Right.
I mean, that's what occurs to me. Who are you?
Yes.
Whose toes are you trying not to step on here? And to be neutral when you need to be taking a stand for justice is just not right.
Yeah. I think and I don't remember what conversation this was. We probably were talking about it on a porch or something. But you know how people say, well, if I were alive during the Holocaust, or if I were alive during slavery, or if I were alive during such and such, if you were alive during those times, you would be doing just what you're doing right now. Because
Yeah,
if you're not saying anything right now, you wouldn't have said anything then.
right.
If you're not doing anything right now, what leads you to believe you would be an Underground Railroad conductor then? Or what leads you to believe that you would be helping to hide Jewish people from mass slaughter and encampment? There is nothing. Whatever you are doing right now is what you would have been doing then. So if injustice is something you don't want to be bothered with, or I don't want to get into that, or let's not let's not push the envelope on that. If you're not willing to do it now, you would have never done it. And that, I believe, is you and I have had this conversation. That is the truth that we need to come to. If you are actively working towards changing things now and you see people who are actively not, I think we need to release ourselves from holding ourselves hostage to hoping that some people will, because some people simply won't. They never will. And that is I would say, a hard piece to come to, because that means there are some relationships that you truly cared about and people that you truly loved that you have to accept will not go outside of their way to do anything different to push equality or equity forward.
Or to acknowledge their own part in the system.
Yes. And that is a painful recognition sometimes to have to come to.
Right. Yeah.
Because words do matter.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Mm-hmm.
On the words do matter thing, we'll when we end this segment, we'll leave you with some things that you can do if you're feeling confused still about where to start. We've got ideas and resources and places to start. But in the meantime, I just witnessed a conversation on somebody else's page about the word racist or something, and somebody was using it to describe themselves really kind of harshly when it's a person who's actively working, and other people say, well, that's racist, you shouldn't even say that. And it's like that's getting thrown around as an inflammatory thing right now. And something I want to say, I can't stop any of that obviously, but there's a couple of different things that might help. As frequently happens, our English language doesn't have words that fine tune very well. We have, like, God means 1,000 different things to millions of different people. And racist means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But right now, I'm going to say a couple things. One is that they're being used interchangeably. An act of racial hostility whether
Mhm.
it's little or whether it's big, is one form of racism. But there is something else that is going on all the time, and that's this systemic racism, this put in place on purpose by some people and overlooked and not understood by a whole lot of other people. Systemic racism is in place, and it includes a whole lot of things. I mean, I don't even know how. Jim Crow laws, voter suppression, redlining in cities, uh, property tax evaluation for Black homeowners that's different than for white homeowners. I don't even know how it's done. Identity checks in stores. Well, I don't know if your check's good, so show me your ID. But this white person behind you, I don't ask to see their ID because I know they're good. Just thousands of systemized things that are put into place. And that is one of the ways that the word racist is used. We're all part of that system. Whether you ever did a racially hostile act or not, you are part of that system. You're either made worse off by it, or I know I made a funny face there, but it's like, or whether you think you're benefiting from it. And I don't really believe that white people are truly benefiting in any sort of a soul way. But
Mhm.
in a financial way, yes, you are part of it. If you live here in this country, we are part of that systemic racism.
I would call that white supremacy. I
Yeah,
think I I think people in general believe that it is only an act of white supremacy if it comes in a white hood and a cross is burning.
mhm,
I don't think people recognize that white supremacy is not so much a physical act, but the design of how the system was created to keep
right,
one race and all of their values solely above everyone else. White supremacy is not a personal attack against white people individually. It is literally how the system was
right,
designed.
right.
And so I think people don't recognize how fluid white supremacy is
Mhm,
and how interwoven it is and how things have been designed to be so.
right.
So I think people, when they hear the word white supremacy, they are still literally looking for the Ku Klux Klan. And
I agree.
that's not how it works.
That's not how it
To
looks
me,
today.
right. To me, even when you speak of white supremacy, the Ku Klux Klan are the racial terrorists of white supremacist
Right,
mindsets. They are not the white supremacists in and of themselves.
right.
And so being able to digest and differentiate between the two is, I think, where many people get stuck
Right,
and don't recognize that white supremacy is so much more than crosses burning or people being
right,
lynched or the Ku Klux Klan marching. It is redlining and banks only approving Black people to buy properties here and how those properties never appreciate. White supremacy is taking a white person's word, their check is good, and versus you're interrogating a black person. White
mhm,
supremacy is all those different things. And
right.
so I think we need to learn how to broaden and differentiate what it actually is. I
I
think I think
agree.
that is a big block for most people.
And you started with a reading from the ACA
Hmm.
and about words matter. And
Yeah.
so, it's probably going to be argued about in a lot of different ways, but make a
Hmm.
distinction to our viewers, make a distinction in your own mind about, you may legitimately say, I've never deliberately done a racially hostile act. And maybe you're right.
Right.
You
Probably,
may
yeah.
have done something that was um, racist in order. What am I trying to say? Accidentally, it's
Yes.
possible.
Hmm.
But that being said, that's still only one piece. Racially hostile acts are one thing, and this whole system of white supremacy that is locked in place by a
Yes.
thousand different things.
Yes.
And by some people, like I say, some people who deliberately want it, and other people who don't want it but don't know what to do to get rid of it. And
Or didn't even
we've gotta-
recognize that it was there. You got to
Right.
recognize for one that it's there. Yes.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yep.
And that's some of what our conversations, I hope, will do is these systems are in place, and it's not hard to find 1,000 different resources documented about this existing. This really does exist.
Right. Yeah.
And sure, some Black people do well. They dodge the bullets, they dodge the landmines, and they manage to make it through. But even so, if they're driving home alone in a car, they're just as subject to some of these stop and frisk, racial profiling things as somebody who's not famous. And every now and then they show it. A young Black movie actor that played on the series called This Is Us. I think he played the young Randall. He tells a story. I mean, he was like 15 or so, and his mother and he were profiled in an LA restaurant, a Hollywood restaurant, even though he's making hundreds of thousands of dollars by now as a young famous actor. And they were actually profiled and told that they couldn't pay a bill, and that was so things happen.
So and
that's part of the
race,
system.
yes, and race always trumps money. I mean, I don't remember years ago, I guess Oprah was in France and she wanted to go in the Hermes store, you know, where they have a $15,000 bags, and they wouldn't let her in because I guess she wasn't all done up, because they just saw a Black woman, was like, you can't afford to come in here. And then afterwards, once she spoke about it, and they were like, holy shit, that was Oprah. It shouldn't have mattered. Race trumps it all, literally trumps it all. And she's been worth millions of dollars since when? Seems like forever.
Right.
But still,
exactly,
you're still a Black person. So race trumps it all.
Right, exactly.
And I don't think people recognize that that's white supremacy. That's what it looks like. Yes.
Right. And it may show up with 100,000 different faces, but it's a system that is so locked in place that supersedes individual hostile acts, which still do exist and are wrong, but that's not quite the same thing as, well, it's not at all the same thing as a systemic white supremacy. And then there's so okay.
And
do you have
so
anything
until
else to say?
no, but I think that's good. And I think, like you said, until more people that unfortunately look like you, call that out and literally use that verbiage, then will more people start to understand, oh, okay. Because I don't believe that, majority of people living their lives, the majority of white people are actively racist.
Right.
They aren't, but they don't also recognize that the system sets it up where they don't have to be. It's already happening on a regular basis.
Right.
And so until enough white people interrupt the system, it will continue.
I agree. And I'm in I want to mention a few different resources here at the end.
Yes.
But one thing I want to say is that there are people that get real defensive at the term racist.
Yes.
And if you are white, I implore you, don't spend any energy getting upset about it. Just learn. You can talk to your spouse or your friends or your family, whoever can hear you, and say, I really never did anything racist on purpose in my life, and they can hear you. But in the larger world, that doesn't matter, because if you're white, you're still a part of this system. And that's what we have to really understand. So don't waste time making excuses for yourself. Just learn. Just be a good learner. Be an open-minded learner, and try to walk in Bernadette's shoes. Try to walk in somebody else's shoes. So I'm going to list a few resources that pop into my mind. And then I don't always remember, by the time I'm posting the videos on YouTube, I don't always remember to list the sources afterward. You can remind me. Feel free.
Yes.
But a really good beginning is White Fragility. It's by a white woman that has trained companies to overcome systemic racism, or at least to face it in their systems. White Fragility. It's excellent. It'll spur you up, but it's well done. And then
it helps, and it speaks to what you were talking about, that automatic response of offense, or I'm not racist, or that's not me. It speaks to why white people have that, and
Right,
also what it allows them to avoid when they stay in that position.
right, right. Just try
Hmm.
to be a good learner. Open your mind.
Yeah.
Be a good learner.
Hmm.
Okay, that's my racial act for today is
Yeah.
racial justice act for today is to be a good learner, to open my mind. So that would be a great place to start is white fragility. There's another one, there's a Facebook group now called White People Doing Something. And it's actually offering classes now and then. It's especially for people who have an interest in this, but have a lot of people around them who are actively making racist comments and they don't know how
Yeah.
to respond to them.
Yeah.
So it's especially for people in that position. It's a good group. Other books would be moving into the books by Black writers. And I'm just starting the book by Ibram X. Kendi called How to Be an Anti-Racist. I've seen him speak in various settings on film. That's an excellent one. How to Be an Anti-Racist.
I think don't read that one unless you're ready to do something though, Linda. If you're not ready to do anything, that's not the book to read.
Okay. Well, I'll read it. I'll see what I'm supposed to be doing next. But
I'm not speaking about you, but I'm just saying if a white person is at the beginning, at the fringes, I think that book would overwhelm them. Because if you've
okay,
not made a point where you're like, okay, I see it now, how can I work towards changing it? That is not the book to read.
right.
Yeah.
So if you're at the very beginning and you're feeling
Mm-hmm.
resistance, reluctance,
Mm-hmm.
white
Robin
fragility
DiAngelo.
are really good.
Yes.
And then beyond that, the things that come to my mind are films because they are so excellent. The film 13th is hard to watch, but it's an excellent history piece. What other
Mm-hmm.
films would you recommend to people at the beginning?
I would say the series Amend that I had talked to you about, speaks about the 14th Amendment. It's like 6 little documentaries that Will Smith narrated, and it speaks towards what happened after 13th and how different things went. And so that is a very good one, I would say, to do. I
What's
would
the
also
title?
Amend, AMEND,
Okay,
and
got it.
that is on Netflix.
Okay,
And so that's like 6 little, maybe 45 minutes to an hour individual ones that you can watch
got it.
that are
Thank you.
standalones that are great. And I would also say probably look up the CNN. There's 2 series. Look up the CNN series Lincoln Divided We Stand.
Okay.
I think that was 6 1-hour series, absolutely phenomenal. And then the one I just finished by CNN was The People versus the Klan. It is about a Black mother by the name of Beulah May Buford, who sued the Ku Klux Klan after they lynched her son in 1983, Linda. Again, the date was 1983
Wow.
in Mobile, Alabama.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Big stuff. Okay, and where is that to be found? People versus the Klan.
Those last 2 are done by CNN. So you probably can look them up on YouTube because those last 2, Lincoln Divided We Stand, is a CNN, and The People versus the Klan is a CNN special as well. Amend is on Netflix, and 13th is on Netflix.
All right. And
Mhm.
here's another one. If you enjoy series, this is very heartfelt and educational. If you enjoy series, it's a dramatic series, not documentary, by Ava DuVernay, who is also the director of 13. She is just phenomenal. She's a Black woman director and just at the top of her field. And the series she did with others, of course, is called Queen Sugar. It's hypothetical or fictional, but it is a wonderful travel through the lives of Black people, wealthy, poor, and activist in historical generational settings in the Delta of Louisiana, and New Orleans Delta, and sugar plantation.
Yes. Now Ava also did When They See Us.
When They See Us is another good one.
How they see us. That was a series off the exonerated 5 from Central Park.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So if you start watching these, if you can't think of anything else to do now, I'm not saying that's enough, but I tell you what, you start watching these, and your mind will start opening, and gradually
Yes.
you will see what is yours to do.
Mm-hmm.
So don't lose heart if you're wanting some change. These are good ways to take in information and find other things to say than maybe what you've always said your whole life.
Right. And your what it is to do. I'm glad you say that you will see what your what it is to do, because your what it is to do will be different for everyone. It
Right.
took all different parts to make great things happen. You had to have Underground Railroad conductors, but you also
Right.
had to have people who prepared meals so that way when they got somewhere, they had to have something to eat.
Right.
So no part is too large or too small. Every part is important. And when they're working in succinct, results are produced. So don't think that you need to start a YouTube channel, for instance, in order to be a part of the conversation, or be, or be a part of the movement. I think it looks different for every person, depending upon what stage or phase of your life that you are in. So we all can do something, but that something will look different for each and every one of us.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So we're posting these on YouTube, and we're sharing on Facebook, and we're doing it on Tuesdays. The full conversation videos come out early Tuesday morning. And sometimes we do pop-ups, just Bernadette or just me on individual topics that are on our mind. We would welcome it if you would subscribe to our channel, if you would take the share button and share it with other people in your lives, either by email or on Facebook. And make comments when you can. Ask us questions. We may not see them the first day, but we'll get through our comments and see them at some point. And we're happy to deal with a topic that some viewer has recommended. So
Yes. So start talking, keep talking. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.